Hello, everybody, and welcome back. My name's Don Arleth, and I'm welcoming you to World Talks here on TVP World. Protests, and more protests. Over the weekend, we could see a peak in the protests in Serbia. Crowds blocked bridges in Novi Sad, where the student protests moved from Belgrade after several days. The authorities maintain that they have met the demonstrators' demands. However, after 3 months of protests and 2 high-profile political resignations, protesters in Serbia are determined to continue. So too is President Aleksandar Vučić. So what are the prospects for real change in Serbia? We now welcome to the program Ivanka Popović, former president of the University of Belgrade, to find out. Hello, Ms. Popović. Good evening, and thank you for joining us on World Talks.
Good evening.
Now, looking at the situation in Novi Sad over the weekend, of course, students marching down to the city, and then looking at the current situation today and yesterday, how has the energy of the protest, has it died down a little bit? What are the plans moving forward?
Well, I would like to just add that, yes, the mass big protest moved from Belgrade to Novi Sad, but we have had protests all over Serbia in very small towns with maybe 100 people, and then larger towns. So it's all over the country. These were, let's say, the pivotal places for the protests because it was the 3-month anniversary of the tragedy in Novi Sad, and that's why there were mass demonstrations in Novi Sad at this time on Sunday. And it was really a very massive meeting where there was 3 bridges were blocked for 3 hours and then 1 bridge for a further 24 hours. Of course, this is something that is very uplifting for the protesters on the one hand to show their perseverance, but you are right. Now the students have gone back into their faculties and they are reassessing what they will do next. I have to say, yes, the Prime Minister has resigned, but his resignation has not been acknowledged by the Parliament. There has been no meeting of Parliament, so there are actually these 30 days that need to pass for either the selection of a new Prime Minister or snap elections. It's unclear whether this time period has started. So there are many, at the moment, a lot of things are hanging in the air. People are expecting changes. One has also the opinion that our president is doing everything he can to drag his feet, so to say, to prolong the process. So I think we are now in a critical phase of these protests where the expectations are running high, but also the stakes are very high. And therefore, I think the government is not really open to any negotiations or discussions. The president did invite the head of Belgrade University and his vice rectors to have a meeting to open up a dialogue. But as the students say, it is really in, let's say, the jurisdiction of the president to discuss such matters. So the rector and his team, they acknowledged and thanked the president for his invitation, but they did not accept it.
Now, how clear do you think it is, the students' postulates, if you will, their demands of the government, what they want to see to bring these protests to a conclusion? And how has the government been able to fare or deal with these demands?
Well, I think the government has been not only just dragging their feet. They were first in denial that there was actually any reconstruction of the canopy that collapsed and killed 15 people and maimed 2 more. So I think the government was also going through a process of how much information they were willing to provide the public. And this caused quite an uproar in the public because it's very clear that this information must be made available to the public. And also because it's taken such a long time to make some of the documents relevant for this reconstruction project to be made available, it's also dubious whether these are the original documents or whether they have been doctored in any way. This is quite disturbing, as a thought. And this was one of the requests of the student, that the government energetically responds and starts prosecuting the responsible people. This has been happening very slowly but and unwillingly, and up to maybe just a few days ago, without the willingness to do financial forensics to see to what extent or whether there was corruption. It seems pretty obvious that there was, but it's one matter to claim and a completely different one if you do a very serious forensic analysis on this. So the protesters are not satisfied. Also, one of the student requests was to prosecute those hooligans that attacked students and peaceful protesters. And this has not also been happening. And there are always new attacks, new incidents that are happening. So this seems to be a request by the students that for the moment cannot be fulfilled. So we have a lot of expectations, not only from the students, but from the citizens of Serbia. And on the other hand, this unwillingness of the government. So this is deepening the divide between the citizens and the government, which is not a good basis for some kind of resolution of the situation that we have.
If we look at the footprint that these protests have had, I mean, they are massive. And actually, the world is turning more of its attention to these protests. Why do you think the government has been so reluctant to find the bad actors in this specific case, in this tragic incident at the Novi Sad train station, and hold those to account?
Well, it's, of course, I will give you what the opinion that most people have, and of course this has to be proven in court, but because the degree of corruption is expected to be so extensive, there is a very strong suspicion that it goes all the way to the top of government. So if you allow for a completely free process of investigating what happened and who are the responsible parties, we might reach some very, very unpleasant solutions for the heads of government. And I think this is the reason why they are unwilling to let the process proceed. Of course, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but at the moment, the situation is such that the suspicions of the citizens are quite high, and the belief that even Mr. Vučić himself might be engaged in some of these corruptive acts, which is, a very strong allegation that has yet to be proved. But if the process is not allowed to proceed, of course, the atmosphere is becoming more and more negative in terms that the government is doing its job. So I think something has to give, but Mr. Vučić is very, very unwilling to do so.
If we listen to the protesters, indeed, they seem to be concentrated around the government, the degree of corruption, the functioning of state institutions. They say they want this all to be normalized and to function as it should. Yet we also see some of the political opposition amongst the protesters, most likely for a very legit cause. I'd like to ask about how the political opposition, because they actually have skin in the game and can actually make changes within the government or to institutions if they get some of the initiative. And I guess my question revolves around that. How are the opposition not using, but trying to better their position, if you will, or to provide some answers and some solutions for the protesters?
Well, as you know, the government has practically full control of the media. There are very few independent media. And these national media under control of the government have done everything that they can to demonize the opposition, which has also weakened it substantially. And also there are some doubts by the citizens and the population whether the opposition is up to the task of making changes. And they are, of course, in the minority in the parliament. So when the students initiated their protest was not as they claim, against the regime, but against the system. They would like for the system and the law and the constitution in Serbia to be respected, that we live in a country with normal rule of law and independent institutions, which is not the case currently. And this is something that the driving, motivating force for the students, and it was very easily picked up and supported by the citizens. And the students made it very clear from the beginning that they don't want any political parties piggybacking on their protests. So it's put the opposition in a bit of a difficult position, that they are there, they are supportive of the students, but they're somehow running in a parallel track. And they will do and they are doing what they can, but simply I think it's not enough. And what we will see, this organic growth of this student movement, appealing to various parts of society, certain professions such as teachers, farmers, lawyers are striking now, and that we have these parallel actions by various walks of society in certain professions that should sort of lead into a massive general resistance, or let's say a massive movement that will insist on the functioning of the system, which means if we have rule of law, that means that the government must respect the law. And that would lead us eventually into elections. But of course, the elections need to be fair and free. The moment we have experience of rigged elections, so no political actor is now willing to enter any type of election process because it's clear what the outcome of the elections would be. So we actually need a transition phase in which these prerequisites need to be fulfilled. First of all, the student demands need to be fulfilled, and secondly, the media need to be opened up to everyone so that there is, let's say, objective reporting. And the third point is to allow, to make the prerequisite conditions for free and fair elections. Then we can move on and let the parties go through the election process.
Okay, well, I imagine these protests will continue. We'll have to see where they lead us. Ivanka Popović, former president at the University of Belgrade, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, and I hope we shall be successful.
Thank you. And that concludes this edition of World Talks. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time. Good night.